Please welcome Wessel Oelofse, the General Manager of VersaPack.
Yeah, morning everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, it's wonderful to be here, and morning to everyone that's online. I know it's probably not as good doing it behind your desk, but nevertheless, it's nice to see some friendly old faces that I've known for many, many years. It's great to actually do this in person again. It's been a while. So before I go on to all of the different slides, and the first thing I need is the clicker. I'm not sure where that is. Oh, here it is. Okay, got it. Thank you. It's just to start off by saying, ultimately this presentation is going to end up with a product, and to be fair, the product is the star of my show, not me. And it was done by an entire team, and it's a very strong, committed, and technically astute team at VersaPack, and I'm privileged to work with them. So really, the kudos is for that team. So I'm going to unpack just a few definitions and things, because this is really about sustainability, and it's about sustainable recycling, sustainable material use, design for recycling, which is very, very important. So I'm going to unpack some of those concepts just generally. I know that a lot of you are probably going to be a little bit bored and say, well, we've heard that all before, but I think what happens quite often is people use those concepts or use those definitions incorrectly, and then that leads to a lot of greenwashing and other problems that come up. So please bear with me before we get to the exciting part. We just need to go through some of those things. So from time to time, every business, you will have what is essentially a really good product. And it fulfills a really good task in the market and is the correct design for your package and what you're trying to protect. In our case, we are food packaging experts, and we protect food. But there's consumer and retailer perception. Retailers, please don't shoot me, but I know that you guys do take a lot of flack from consumers, so there we go. That kind of generates an incorrect perspective of that product. And try as you may, you can't really get that education through to the consumers. So then you have to see, okay, well, how do we cover all of our bases? Make sure that we have an existing traditional product that does the job brilliantly, but also bring something new and exciting and innovative into the space that, within many people's perceptions, is a more sustainable and better product generally for the environment. So that's how this thing starts. Before I get into that, I just want to give you a little bit of feedback about, okay, who is Impact and who is VersaPack, so that I'm not talking from a blank space and no one knows what I'm on about. So just for Impact, and please forgive me, it's BBBEE, not the other way around, but there we go. So Impact is a very, very big, one of the biggest, in fact, packaging businesses in the country. Impact concentrates on paper and on plastics. The paper part of the business is significantly bigger than the plastics part of the business, and they are the leading paper business in the country. In paper, they're very involved in recycling. We are very involved in recycling. Obviously, paper manufacturing, and then corrugated board. And they supply us, so friends all around. On the plastic side, there are really four businesses. One that many of you would be aware of is the PET bottles and closures. It's kind of always in the forefront. Everyone talks about it. We've got Petco that's been doing brilliant work on the recycling of PET bottles over many years. So that's the one that in all of these kind of forums stands out. Then there's FMCG containers, which is kind of lower volume stuff, but also some high volume food packaging stuff, but also into the medical industry and other industrial spaces. Bins and crates, which is very much kind of a standalone that does big crates, big bins, very strong in the agric market. And then VersaPack, which is me and my team and the team that developed this product. VersaPack does, to put it very shortly, trays and forms. Trays and forms are, so if you buy any meat pack generally in a store, it's going to be in a styrene tray or a PET tray. We do those things. If you buy your grapes, it's going to be in a punnet. we do that. And then cling wrap. Everybody, I'm sure, in this room uses cling wrap regularly, and a lot of the products that you buy are protected by cling wrap, so that's something else that we do also. So over 5,000 people that work for Impact. There are 39 operating sites, and we are active in Namibia, Mozambique, and South Africa. Obviously, we have markets in further countries more than that. Versapack, on its own, is 2 factories. One is in Paarl and one is up here in Ridderkop. So for my sins, I'm regularly visiting all of you folk up here in Johannesburg. In Paarl, it's the only site where we do cling film manufacture. It transports easily, it's very dense. The impact on environment and cost on transport is quite low on that product. But then on both sites, we do everything that I explained before, which is the polystyrene trays, fast food containers, PET trays, punnets, and all of that sort of thing. Right, so at Impact, and in this instance at Versapack in particular, we believe in doing the right thing, but not just doing the right thing, demonstrating that we do the right thing. With that in mind, we are part of a number of industry initiatives. We adhere to a number of directives, EU, FDA, etc., etc. We are involved with SAVA. I'm on the SAVA board. My boss, Neelan Naidu, is on the Polyco board. We're members of Plastics SA and Packaging SA and the Compostable Plastics Council. And then, the one I think that stands out more than any is because it's quite unique in a lot of ways, is the BRC, which is the British Retail Consortium. What that really is a standard that covers food safety, health and safety, manufacturing methods, waste, environmental impacts, the entire gamut that you can possibly think of, and that is audited on a regular basis. Right, so just some key points that I'd like to talk about on Versapack's approach to sustainability. So consistent terminology. I'm going to quickly go through some of that on the next couple of slides, just so that people understand that sometimes we get that wrong. Then the packaging design and the value chain. So the packaging has to be fit for purpose, but you can't look at the packaging in isolation. It needs to be looked at the entire value chain, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. Then some design principles that we use, and ultimately then bringing innovation to life, and I'll show you the magnificent product that we have developed. Right, so greenwashing is a problem, generally speaking, in many, many industries. I don't think you can look at a single advert nowadays. Somewhere along the line, it's echo this and echo that, and all of that stuff. And a lot of that is just greenwashing. There's no different to what they've been doing in the past. It's the same thing, and we just carry on. So the problem with greenwashing is that it's kind of half-truths or not full truths, and yes, it's going to get you sales today and get you market impact today, but in the long run, it's basically destroying value for everybody. And that's obviously a big problem. So we need to raise awareness and hold people accountable. And I think one of the things that is really going to help, particularly the people that are sitting in this room and that are online, is that the government stance on LCAs, life cycle assessments. I think that is going to be something that is going to bring home some truths that many people up until now haven't really been prepared to look at. And in my personal opinion, it's going to be very, very beneficial for the plastic packaging industry as a whole. So I can't wait for some of that to happen, and it was wonderful to see the previous presentation, and that was just a small snapshot of what I expect a lot of the results to start showing as far as plastic packaging is concerned. Right, so there are a number of definitions for things that we really, really need to get right, and we need to be consistent with, and if everybody in the industry is consistent with it, then we will start designing things in the right way, design for recycling, design for effectiveness, design for sustainability. So sustainable packaging is designed for the product, for the environment, and it's a consideration throughout its entire life cycle, from not just you manufacturing it, but how is it used, how's the product packed, what happens to it at the end of life. etc., etc. Recycling in this country, we do mechanical recycling by and large. I hear or hope that some chemical recycling will be coming online soon to take care of the more difficult things or the stuff that falls by the wayside because of the waste factors in mechanical recycling. Closed loop is really about product to product. So the famous example in South Africa is obviously the PET bottles. PET is post-consumer, recycled, goes back into PET bottles ultimately that are then recycled again. So something I just want to add is that a lot of the retailers are talking about, and the Europeans, I wouldn't say, I don't want to use the word worse, but they are certainly the ones pushing it. They want 100% recyclate in everything. So, that becomes unsustainable. If you do the calculations, you'll see that anything over 60% is really unsustainable. It's around about 58%. As soon as you start adding more than 58%, you are not going to be able to generate enough recyclate, number one. And number two, the quality of that recyclate is going to get to the point where it's unusable. The open loop recycling is really, Kirsten mentioned it this morning, something is recycled into something else. So generally, often called downcycling. I don't like that word because I think it's just as useful and just as important as closed loop recycling. Then the recyclate, the way that we look at recyclate, it's post-consumer recyclate. Our business, and you'll see a few photos later on, that show that we generate a lot of skeletal waste as we are thermoforming product. So that skeletal waste can be, anything up to 50% of what we are putting through the thermoforming machine. That is not recyclate. That is internal regrind. And a lot of people confuse that issue and use it in their favor to do marketing material. And then the recycled content is straightforward. It's post-consumer recyclate that you have then put into a new product, and it's the actual percentage in that finished product. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay, then a thing that's wonderful that we do a lot in this country is we say something's recyclable when it's not recycled. So yes, it is recyclable in some country somewhere in the world, but one thing that the EPR is going to force us to do is to make sure that when we say something is recyclable, that it is actually recycled in this country. And that's what's important there is that when something is recyclable, it complies with certain standards of design for recycling. Then compostable and biodegradable packaging. Often people think it's the panacea and be all and end all of everything. Firstly, this stuff needs to break down into non-toxic elements. If it does not, then it can't be called that. Secondly, compostable is not always compostable. So many of the compostable products have to be composted with a certain environment. It needs temperature, pressure, humidity, and microorganisms. And often these only exist in industrial composters. And the capacity of industrial composters in South Africa is not big enough to deal with all the compostable product. So it can be problematic. I'm not saying that it is. Biodegradable also require microorganisms, but they generally don't tend to be specific environmental factors. What does happen is the environmental factors will impact on how long that thing takes to biodegrade. So there's no set time on a biodegradable product. One thing that's important is that both of those products or types of products are not necessarily recyclable and not necessarily reusable. So we need to be very careful when we're going forward in the industry, deciding on how we're going to deal with different things, that particular sphere of the market is taken care of very, very carefully. Then Kirsten did a lot of work on reusable and refillable, and I think it speaks for itself. Everyone knows what that is. Right, so I said I wanted to take you through the entire value chain of how these things work and that you can't just concentrate on packaging. So if you look at the value chain, this was a case study done on bananas, basically all the way through to the farm, up to the disposal. And you can see there, it's clear as day. Farming is 29% of the carbon footprint. Transportation, 36% of the carbon footprint. The retail side, 9%, and then the ultimate disposal, 15%, and packaging is 9%. So packaging together with the retail side is actually, they are the two smallest factors that impact the carbon footprint of that product. Now, one of the things that people often moan about is a cucumber is wrapped in plastic. What are we doing? Well, the alternative is that half the cucumbers go rotten and get thrown in the landfill and generate greenhouse gases that are significantly more than any plastic that we're putting over the cucumbers. So that just shows you that you can't just concentrate on the packaging and say, okay, we've made a brilliantly sustainable product. You need to concentrate on the entire chain to make sure that ultimately it is a sustainable product. Right, so that's a little schematic of one of the products that we've developed. So it's a range of products. We call it PetSorb. The reason it's called PetSorb, it's made out of PET, and it does something special with liquids. First thing I want to do before I tell you everything about the product is just take you a little bit through, okay, how do we design this thing? So the concept comes, we have a product that's really good, it's working well. The consumer, in some ways, some of the retailers are looking for something different, something innovative, and something that's going to be more sustainable. So you sit down and you decide, okay, what are we going to do? There's a concept there that says, okay, we can achieve certain things if we change the design. We do a PET tray instead of a styrene tray, but we change the design to eliminate certain high carbon or high waste issues that are in PET trays in general. So it's a sit down, it's a discussion, technical teams working together. Then Impact is lucky enough, we have a really astute design center with a lot of capability. So they will come and do base designs. These designs are then taken by our technical team. The technical team will decide, sorry, let me take a step back. Up front, you need to decide the material and the material combination. So we said right from the beginning, we want this thing to be PET and PET only, nothing else. So it can be virgin PET, or it can be rPET, recycled PET, post-consumer, or it can be a combination of the two. Another thing that we wanted to do is that any lidding film that's sealed on there also needs to be PET, and it needs to be a monomer PET so that it can be recycled altogether. You don't need to remove it and try and do something else with that piece of flexible packaging. So that's the first step. The second step, we get the concept designs. The technical team will take those. We will make sample molds, punch out a bunch of samples, test different, and I'll speak a little bit more about the pockets in the product when we get to the next couple of slides, but test different sizes of those, see which works the best, see what the outcomes are for different tray sizes, different tray applications. That detail then goes back to the design center, who then does a kind of a close to final rendering of it. Sample molds are made for that. Various versions of that are made and then sent out to customers. So send it to the customer, the guy that's packing chicken, the guy that's packing meat, boerewors, whatever the case may be, whether they use it with a sealing machine that puts a sealing film on it, does it work on there? Does it give us the required performance that we expected in the beginning? Also, send it to guys that are doing hand wrapping with cling film, auto packing with cling film. Does it behave the way it's expected to behave? That is all then fed back, and then it's again a sit down, final designs to optimize all of that, and then it's molds. And when you get your final molds, it's not just okay, we're done now. It's again sample run, send it to customers, send it to everyone, get the testing done. One of the things that, and it was raised by Kirsten in the first presentation this morning, is that vacuum-formed PET is not recycled in this country at this point in time. So there's that kind of elephant in the room. So what's happening in that space, and the reason why we decided to forge ahead with this, is that the industry has come together. So everyone that does vacuum forming of PET has come together, together with some consultants that have helped us. Robbie's here today. He's got a presentation later on today, and formed a committee basically to handle this, and then ultimately to get it done via Polyco, via the EPR schemes. So getting it done via Polyco, the committee is deciding how and when it does, and we basically press the button to start the collections and the investments at certain recycling companies to make sure that it can be done in high volume. It started to be done in small volume by a group in George, but obviously for what we require and what the government requires of us, that needs to step up tenfold. So that's what we're doing. So that's one of the reasons why we said, okay, we're going to go for PET. In a year's time, it is not going to be an unrecycled product. It is definitely going to be a recycled product, and in the first year, we definitely will be meeting our collection targets. Right, so how's this product made? So you will have, and if I take you just from the top left, and we're going to do a quick clockwise work through some of these photos. So you've got virgin or post-consumer recycled PET. That's obviously you have to feed it in, you have to dry it, you have to heat it, melt it, extrude it. The next photo is what we call reclaim. It's basically regrind that's been put back into a pellet form. So that we do internally. All of our skeletal waste gets reground and then repelletized and put back in. So that's the second photo. So those are all blended, and then eventually you do an extrusion process and you get your PET sheet. You can see on the top right, that's the PET sheet coming off. Then just below that, you can see that's the former, and what you actually see there is the skeletal that comes off after you formed that product. So that skeletal then has to come all the way back and get reground again. Of interest there is that if you are running an rPET product, we run a lot of 100% rPET products for the European market, that material has to be kept totally separately to ensure that your rPET is always 100% rPET and you're not feeding some other internal skeletal waste or recycle it into it. Obviously, the quality checks, packing off to the customer. So just a quick breakdown so that people understand how the thing's made. Right, so then we get to the product. So what is special about this product? First thing is, it's fully recyclable, and within the next months will be recycled. It can be made out of 100% food-grade rPET. The pockets, so in the bottom of the product, there are these tiny little pockets. And these pockets are designed very, very specifically with the meat, juice, whatever you want to call it. People call it blood, but it's a combination of blood and proteins and all sorts of things, to hold as much of that in as possible. So what does that do? And it uses surface tension. It's a very simple, people know surface tension. If a spider's sitting on a pool, he's not sinking because the surface tension is holding him there. Very similar kind of concept. It holds that liquid in those pockets. That means that on all the PET trays, you don't need soaker pads. So I'm sure a lot of you know, you buy meat, sometimes if it's in a styrene tray, sometimes if it's in a PET tray, there will be a pad in there that you need to take out and throw away. It's very messy. It's a bit, it's not, not the most wonderful thing to handle. So this product takes that entirely out. So it has the potential to take 20 million of those pads out of the system. We haven't worked out exactly what the saving there on landfill plastics and carbon emissions are, but it's significant. We don't have to use virgin material. So it can be done with 100% rPET, as I said, and the internal recycler that we use. One thing it does is creates demand for recycled plastics. How does it do that? If we are calling for all of this rPET from our rPET suppliers, they are needing to draw as much of this as they can get to make sure that they can supply the market. And that's a bit of a conundrum at the moment. The guys that do supply the market don't actually supply enough for the market. But I guess for them it's a good space to be in. For us, not so good, but it's early days. Right. Some of what we are doing with Polyco and with these trays will stimulate the collection and investment in the recycling industry. I can't go into detail about that at this stage. And by doing that, we're going to have less products leaking into the environment. One of the advantages it does have over a styrene tray, styrene is very light. You heard our waste collector here yesterday, I forget his name, but he spoke beautifully. He's a very, very erudite gentleman. He mentioned that styrene is problematic. You have to pick up a huge bag of styrene and you get nothing for it. This doesn't have those problems. So it's not light, it's easier to transport. It's designed right-weighted, which means it's got value in it and can be recycled. Then I've mentioned design for recycling a few times in this process. It has been designed with that in mind. And then it's a generic range. So we're not saying this is a unique range. It's something that fits into platforms and footprints that currently exist, and it's open to the entire market. That means it fits on existing machinery, it fits on in existing packaging lines, it fits on existing shelves, and everyone can buy it, everyone can use it. It should stimulate the growth in the product. Right, I want to do a small demonstration, and I hope she's going to forgive me for calling her up, but I'm going to ask Annabi to come and help me with this. Annabi, I needed someone short enough. So this is the product. This is one of the footprints of the product. Many of you that may know styrene trays that are similar, that you have meat packed in, you might notice that this is a little bit deeper than a styrene tray. The reason that we did that is so that you can actually get a little bit more meat onto this tray than you would a styrene tray, which then obviously helps the cost effectiveness of the product per kilo of meat that the retailer is I don't want to put too much in here.
Blood and protein, not only water.
Well, I was going to do blood and protein, Annabi, but I thought you wouldn't forgive me. Right, so one of the things this can do, please take that for me, is that the retailer can display it on the shelf standing up. You weren't supposed to do that, Annabi.
Oh, sorry, Mom. It didn't fall out.
So, you stay here. The retailer can display it standing up, so you can see what's in the meat, what the quality of the meat is, and all of that. And as Annabi so beautifully showed, it holds the liquid in those pockets. So, thank you, Annabi. So people are going to ask, well, how does that compare to your soaker pad? And for that matter, we've got another really good product called Ultrazorb, which is the styrene version that absorbs the liquid. These PET trays, 3 times what a soaker pad will absorb, and depending on the product, between 1.5 and 2 times what the Ultrazorb product can absorb. Right, so as I was saying, this is really the star of the show. This is the product that I'm talking about, and yeah, we hope that it takes off and we hope that it does really well. Just something, Anton is here, you're obviously fully aware. This product won the Gold Pack Award, the last Gold Packs, and it actually, this year, and actually won the entire show. So I think the committee at Gold Pack also believes that this product is something that can change the future. Right, a little bit of information about myself and VersaPack. This will be available for people, I'm sure, afterwards. It's all the numbers. It's kind of a short breakdown of what we do and where we do it. My contact details, direct contact details, cell phone, etc. I'm not going to go through all of that. I don't want to bore you guys with that. All right, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to present.